But at the time of my attack, Sharp, if you guys are familiar with Sharp, Sharp was not established. So the way they handled it was in-house at the units. And what ended up happening with me is my attacker threatened to kill me. He came back on Fort Polk. I was stationed at Fort Polk, if you're familiar, with a gun to kill me. And so they did a threat to life PCS. I had a family advocate come to me and say, you got to get out of here. You're not going to live. And I'm going to tell you guys what's really funny. My dad is a 4-star general in the Air Force. I went Army because I failed out of Winston State. I'm just going to be real. Like, I didn't know you had to go to class to get grades. Okay. I didn't put that together. But, you know, I was so ashamed because here I am. I'm in the Army and I have this 4-star daddy who I'm trying to obviously make proud. And here I am, and I got myself raped. And that was my mentality for a very long time. So I became an alcoholic, a bad one. And I'm not talking about wine here and there. I'm talking about I was drinking with grown men, drinking them under the table. And I lived like that for a very long time. And had it not been for that victim's advocate at Fort Polk reaching back out to me and now knowing now my husband to kind of guide me through that journey, I would be dead. I wanted to die. It would have been helpful for me to have died because it was so much on me. So I appreciate you sharing that, because all of you, because I don't think people realize that rape is not kind. MST, I actually hate that phrase. I know they're going to kick me for saying that. I hate that phrase because it waters down what happens. Yeah. When I was raped, I suffered a vaginal prolapse. I don't know if any of you guys know what that means, but my organs will be forever damaged from that. So I am never going to be the Shannon or Shay that I once was. So it is now my duty and all of our duties to help advocate and stop trying to make MST this flowery thing. It's horrible. Rape is horrible. And if you know someone that has been attacked or in that situation, it is your duty to speak up on their behalf, because I did not have the power for 10 years to do so. I drunk. That's how I got through it. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. That was great, Shay. And I think that you bring a very, very important topic to the surface. It is still heavily stigmatized. Having this conversation, it's not an easy conversation. It's not a pretty conversation, but it's still heavily stigmatized. People don't want to talk about it. But having these tough conversations is where we need to start, and we need to continue. We need to build momentum behind those tough conversations. So thank you as well, because I think that it matters to be able to share something so deep and personal about yourself.
And in order to have those conversations, we have to educate people on what are the right things and the wrong things to say to someone when they do come to you about an assault. The first thing that comes out of your mouth should not be, what were you wearing? Where were you at? What were you doing? Did you drink? The first question should be, are you okay? What can I do to help you? So often people will be assaulted and then they'll feel ashamed about it. How often do you hear people getting mugged and them saying, I'm so ashamed I got mugged? Or they'll tell someone, the person goes, are you okay? They don't go, well, were you walking down a dark alley with your wallet? Why did you get mugged? Why were you there at that time of day? No one ever says that. But if someone says I was assaulted, they get these line of questions that are accusing them. And it has to start there. We can't accuse people. We don't accuse people when they get mugged. Don't accuse us when we get something else stolen from us. Our pride, our dignity. Because when these things happen, no one's asking for that. And people assume that, well, you were dressing provocatively. No, that's not the case. In my instance, I came back from pre-deployment training. I was home unpacking at 3 a.m, getting ready to celebrate Veterans Day. And a senior NCO barged into my room, beat me, brutally raped me, and then left. I wasn't dressed a certain way. I wasn't drinking. He had been drinking. So, you know, that starts with the language that people use when someone does come forward to talk about those things. Now, that being said, how do we keep these relationships going once we talk about these things to people? Because it's not just about talking to it. They have to support us, but how do we keep that relationship going? So it's not just like, oh, she told me about it. She should be fine. She just got that off her chest. What advice would y'all give?
I would say it's very important that you connect yourself with an organization or a group that you know will be supportive. There's a number of great organizations out there across the US that can address these topics, address these issues. everybody's story is very individualized, right? It's not a one size fits all. And we say that a lot about the Pink Berets. We're not a one size fits all. We're here to help everyone and anyone without any stipulations. And you'd be surprised to find that men come to us for help as well. This is not a gender specific issue. I want to emphasize that here today. Okay. It can happen to anybody. It does not matter how you identify as a person. It can happen to anybody. So when you are working with somebody or you come across somebody's story, make sure that you help that person get to the next phase of their journey, right? Because you never know where you're going to leave them. I can tell you right now, as a leader of an organization who places a strong emphasis on helping people holistically, we have lost some women. We have lost some women that could no longer deal with what it was that they were subjected to. And we don't want to lose any more women to suicide. So it's extremely important for us to come together and identify this amongst ourselves.
And one thing I do want to add is, like I said before, you know, I went on Instagram and did this video sharing my experience. Boy. I thought I was going to get a slew of women reaching out to me. I did not. I got stories of men that were in infantry units who, as a form of hazing, were brutally raped. And we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. This is something that is just, we're just blowing past as if hazing of this nature is normal, and it's not. And we need to start holding people accountable, number one, and we need to stop watering down what has happened. I can tell you, sitting and looking in this room, that half of this room has experienced what they call MST. And we need to start calling it, as you guys see on these lovely pins that were made, we need to start calling it what it is. Getting catcalled is not normal. Nope. Being looked at or touched that is not normal. And we need to step up and start talking about these things. So thank you for saying that.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, piggybacking off of that, I published a book called No Longer Silent, because we cannot be silent about. There we go. Someone's got it. Thank you. We got it. Someone has got my book. Thank you. I'll come sign it for you later. But you know, it's so important to use our voices, because you just don't know who you could be saving. You, at that time, you're not thinking about saving anybody else. You're like, I'm trying to get healed. I'm trying to help myself. But then you don't realize who all you might have helped. Like I said, the man that assaulted me and did it to other people. So I may have just stopped him from doing it to hundreds of others. I may never know, but I know that I did my part. I did what I could. We have to speak up. And more men buy my book than women. When you said that, that was so interesting. I did not expect that whatsoever. So I've had so many men come up to me saying, as a kid, I was messed with by a priest. Or, you know, when I was in the military, I had this. And it was baffling to me, but it goes to show that men go through this just as much as women. The difference is they have a different type of shame associated with it, because society tells them if a woman's hitting on you, you better like it or you're gay. And so now they don't want to come forward saying this woman raped me or this woman touched me inappropriately, because if they do, they're seen as a punk or a sissy, which is not the case at all. Sexual assault is sexual assault. If you don't want to be touched, you don't want to be touched. I don't care if you're a freaking alien. It don't matter if you're a man or a woman. You don't want to be touched. You don't want to be touched. So I discovered that after publishing my book, which was, I'm glad that men are doing that, but I want everyone to do that. It's important that everyone does that.
And on a similar note, this conversation about men and women, like, this is sexual assault and ending rape in this country is everyone's job, and it takes everyone. And I, as we were talking about this, when my previous experiences, my experience in higher education and throughout my childhood with sexual abuse, allowed me, or not allowed me, primed me to look past warning signs in my workplace for 3 years, too long. And what actually got me out of a dangerous position was not speaking up for myself, which I wish I had done. It was a male peer soldier who recognized what was happening and said, someone needs to do something. We need to say something. And it was actually 3 lower enlisted male soldiers that came up on my behalf to take me out of a dangerous situation that I would not have taken myself out of, because I'd survived worse. You know, I'd put up with worse. I didn't want to report. I was afraid of retaliation. I was afraid of losing this position as the only female in an infantry line. I took pride in that. And I am forever thankful to those male soldiers who stuck for me, who recognized that something was wrong and said something, despite they're still there. They have received retaliation for standing up for me. And we do not currently have systems in place to support those who are standing up for each other. So just on that thought, like, thank you all for being in this space. Thank you to the men who showed up today to hear this and to support one another, and just encouraging everyone to be a part of this fight.
You just brought up a memory for me. I gotta share this one. So this will help a lot of people who are dependents. So as a child, I was a military dependent, and I was raped for 2 years and shot and a whole bunch of other craziness. And during that time, you know, I was a little kid. I thought this was normal. You know, I was being groomed and being told that this type of stuff was okay. And of course, I knew something was right. And so going from a stellar student who loved school, loved life, to all of a sudden going to school and cursing and having bruises all over me. And, you know, they would say, you have to go home now. And I'd start crying. I don't want to go home, because I knew when I got home, I was going to be abused by the man who lived there. Then I was getting beat up by the neighbors. And then having to come to school was my safe haven. That was the only way I could get away from this man. It took my teacher. It took my teacher realizing something's not right. She kept calling my mother. My mom wouldn't take her calls. So she just showed up at her house. And I remember being in the back room and them talking to each other and hearing my mother cry. 3 days later, I was out of that house. The man who was assaulting me said, if I ever see you, I will kill you. He told me that at 7 years old. I got removed from the home, and at 13, I got a random phone call 7 states away. My grandma gives me a phone and says, take this call. And I got on. She didn't know who it was. And it was the man who had assaulted me as a child. And he said, I'm coming for you. I know where you live. I didn't know I had PTSD back then. I started sleeping with guns under my bed. I had a pit bull I slept with in my room. This was trauma I've been dealing with for years and years and years. Part of what I talk about in my book is trying to find that teacher to thank her for stepping up. Her questioning something's not right as a child may have saved my life, because he said he would kill me if he saw me again. And then he contacted me later on saying, I'm going to keep my word. And to this day, he's still alive. And he lives 2 hours away from me. So all that being said is the kindness you show to people. If you see something and something doesn't feel right, ask questions. And it doesn't just have to be with children. It could be with teenagers. It could be with men and women. It could be with the elderly. I just spoke to an elderly man who was assaulted. Show that kindness. Ask questions. Don't say that's none of my business. That's none of my concern. Because if it happened to you or your daughter or your nephew or your father, you would be all up in it. So treat everyone like that. This is a collaboration. We have to all work together to protect each other. So I wanted to share that because that got me shaking up here. Just thinking about that as a child, having to deal with that. And then again, as an adult. So I'm going to transition from that to what advice you ladies would give to someone who feels alone, who doesn't have that help, and they feel like they don't have resources. What advice would you give them to help them on their healing journey?
I would give them the advice that was given to me, which is, number one, you are not on anybody else's timeline. Healing is different for all of us. Our responses to trauma are different. I have a really good friend that is was in the military with me, and she was assaulted. And what she did to cope is she became hypersexual, and people would call her a hoe, or you're this, excuse my language, sorry. They were calling her all of these names because they did not understand that that was her trauma response. And so what happened with her is she had to go through an entire season of that to figure out why she was even responding in that way. We don't know why. I don't know why I started drinking. I just know I started drinking because I didn't have to think about it anymore. I knew that when I went to go to my parents' house, if I was under the influence, looking in my dad's eyes, it was easier for me because I didn't want to be the stain on this man who has accomplished so much just to have a daughter come back home tainted. And so I struggled with even being able to allow others to love me, right? I struggled with, thank God for this man, I promise you. I'm not just hyping him up, he's a good guy. He has worked with me. And so what I would tell everyone is your healing journey is different. Don't be on anyone else's timeline. And it's okay to share parts of your story as you feel comfortable. And also know there are 5 people up here that are willing to talk to you at any time of the night. Call us. We are here for you. We will help you. The other thing that I will say is the VA process for me, I can't speak for y'all, that traumatized me more than anything I had ever experienced. Shout out to the VA though, by the way, like no shade. Because it forced me to relive all of that stuff. And in my case, when I was getting out of the military, I was told, look, you have to sign this paper saying you were not a victim of MST, and I'll send you home honorably, or you can fight this, and I'm going to send you home with a dishonorable discharge. That in itself was a traumatic event for me. I didn't know how to heal from that. So for 10 years, I was jacked up because who do you trust at that point? So I would just tell all of you, or if you know someone, just be there for them, listen to them, allow their journey to work itself through, and know that nobody here is alone because you know you have 5 people that you can reach out to at any time.
Thank you for that, Shay. And again, just incredible insight. And thank you for being here today and just sharing your story, because that drives the impact that you're going to have on somebody else who may be able to relate. What I would say is not to let what's happened to you define you as an individual. Okay. It took me a long time to discover that about myself. And look where I am today. I'm sitting on a stage sharing our journey with you. And I promise we're not part of the Complaint Academy. We just want to make sure everybody knows what's happening in real time, right? These are tough conversations that we have to continue having. But also, I sit on the Department of Defense Committee for Prevention of Sexual Misconduct in the Military. I worked on the work group for the Secretary of the VA for prevention of sexual harassment and sexual assault in the VA system. I now sit on the National Institute of Justice Advisory Board to conduct research behind the perpetrators. So the work that we need to do and continue doing is profound, but so is the issue. So what I want to share with you all today is, again, a very similar message: show up for each other, right? We may not be in your respective state, but find an organization in your vicinity that can support you. I know there's other organizations out there that support the way that we do. And we love partnering with other organizations and collaborating with other organizations, knowing that we can connect the dots together, that we can offer resources, but show up for each other. That is so important.
And as you guys are talking about this feeling alone and feeling kind of trapped in your own mind and your own experience in reaction to things like this, I am kind of currently experiencing my reactions. Like everything has just now come up for me in the last year or two. And my experience in the military has brought up a lot of previous trauma that I had not addressed. And in that, one of the most isolating feelings was that I had, see now it's my turn to cry. I had found identity in strength in who I was in my uniform. And those experiences took that away. I no longer feel strong and bold and fearless when I put on that uniform. And it makes it harder for me to do my job now. And I am still working through the relationship that I have to my service because of these experiences. And that is the most isolating thing about what we are currently experiencing. And it makes it hard for me to come to spaces like this with wonderful women like this who have done years in service and have experienced much more intense and traumatic things. And it's that coming back to don't compare trauma, is that my feelings about not feeling powerful and brave and not feeling like I can put on that uniform and really believe in what I'm doing anymore, that is something that I'm sure other people have experienced. So being vulnerable with that, with the damage to your relationship, with your service, don't feel isolated in that. I have felt isolated in that, and it's kept me from talking to valuable female peers, valuable service peers who may be able to help me in that, because I believe that that's a personal issue. And I guess I'm just saying this to, if you're experiencing discomfort or a loss of trust in your service, please don't feel alone in that. And please know that there are survivors who will support you in those feelings.
Being vulnerable is healing. It is healing. Beautiful. You have anything to add? Wow, ladies, you were saying some powerful things. So, you all aren't alone. Just know that. And we hear you. We see you. Okay. Now, I'm getting the cue that we're running short on time. So, we have to bring this incredible conversation to a close. However, I do want to open it up. Do we have enough time for questions? I'd like to open it up. If anyone has any questions, we'll take a few questions. Okay. I wonder, do we have an extra mic? And then also after we finish the questions, we'll definitely be able to meet with anyone that would like to talk to us afterwards as well. So
Can each of the speakers mention how we can connect with them on social media or their websites?
she like, I already know. Absolutely. So I guess for my social media platforms, I'm biggest on Instagram. So you can find me at Miss _, the letter T, _ Garnier, like the shampoo. Also Therese Garnier on Facebook and Twitter. And then I also have a website, but I have a digital business card. So if anyone wants that afterwards, so you can have all my contact info, just come hit me up and I'll make sure to share that with you all.
I am not on social media personally, but for the Pink Berets, you can find us at thepinkberets.org. You can find us on Instagram at the Pink Berets, on Facebook at the Pink Berets, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, the _ Pink Berets.
Same.
I am hesitant. So I'll give you out my Instagram, and if anyone wants to connect with me directly, I'd be happy to give you my email. I am of the generation that is fighting against social media because it's personally bad for my mental health. Personally mine. But my Instagram is Angelina JDT, Juliet Delta Tango. Angelina JDT.
And I'm on Instagram. So you can follow me at Shay Spencer Watson.
Do you have any other questions? Anyone? Oh, we got one right here.
I was just wondering if you could share some of the other, you said there are a lot of other organizations that can help besides Pink Berets. We could list a few or.
So one I know is it's called Warrior Path. I use them. They have a whole bunch of different locations. It's a 6-day program. They actually take you to a facility to work on post-traumatic growth. Very empowering. I'm telling you, that place saved my life, and a lot of women that are in there, it saved our lives. So if you need more information, I'll let you know, but I know they're in the back.
There's Shield of Sisters is present at this conference as well, and I know they're doing a lot of work in the MST space. Very profound work. So that's another organization that we're aware of. Unfortunately, there's not a number of them, but they are out there, I assure you. But we do vet the organizations we work with because we want to ensure that the women are getting what's necessary in terms of help.
There's also the VA as well. So if you want to seek help through the VA, some have had great experiences. I can't speak to others. And there's also the vet centers well.
And what I can do, ma'am, is I run a program at Fisher House Foundation, ironically, where nonprofits submit. Many of my winners are in this room right now, called the Fisher Service Award. So what I can do is I can provide you some resources afterwards with a list of those nonprofits.
I know it's sometimes hard to think on the spot. So in the app that we have for the MIC, can you guys just post it? Because you probably think of some things afterwards.
Sure.
It'll be like, especially since you're talking about a vetted list, and or can you post it maybe as a post on the Pink Berets, and then people can go back.
Sure, sure. That's a
I know-
great
I know
suggestion.
sometimes it's hard when you're trying to wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
We gotta get out of here.
It's not a question, but I work for the Veterans Crisis Line. So if anybody wants to get my contact information, I can also, give you guys some resources as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
For men, there's a thing called 1in6.org. I have male family members that went in there and helped them out a lot. So 1in6.org is very good as well for male survivors.
And then I just want to say, because I know we're kind of getting Sandmaned off the stage here, but I think that the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away is that we need to call it what it is. And it is not us saying MST, it's rape. And we need to let people know exactly what that is.
So thank you all for joining us. And please feel free to stop back at the booth. We'd love to get feedback from you all and maybe, talk to you all. And also I'm promoting my book back there as well. So that's another resource. Just throwing that out there. Thank you all.